Welcome to the Dividend Talk podcast, episode 203. Our favorite retirement destinations to live off with dividends. Dividend Talk is your number one podcast for all things dividend and stock market related with a unique European flavour. My name is Derek from Engineer My Freedom, and I'm joined with my co-host, European DGI. If you want to learn more about us, please visit europeandgi.com, where we have articles on dividend growth investing, including 30 European dividend aristocrats. While you're there, you might as well grab our free dividend portfolio tracker template. We also offer a premium dividend growth service featuring a bi-weekly newsletter, which includes stock deep dives, dividend stock cards, and access to our dashboard with over 130 dividend growth stocks. All of this is based on our very own dividend safety analysis. But enough about that. Please grab a cup of coffee and let's get started. Hey, European DJ. How are you, friend?
Oh, really good. It's another opportunity to speak with you again about dividend investing. And I've been enjoying the weather, some rain nowadays as well. So it felt a bit like Ireland today, but that's good for the nature here. But damn it, you look red. What happened to you?
I spent my week in Malaga. So I only got home this weekend today. Literally only in the door about 20 minutes or so. So you've done a lot of the prep today, so thank you for that. But yeah, look, it was rare for me to see the sunshine. It was 29 degrees at 10 o'clock in the morning, sun all the way through. And I loved it. What seldom is seen is awesome. Got up, no work to do. Didn't bring a laptop, barely had my phone on me. So it was quite nice and chilled, nice and relaxed. I feel a little bit refreshed. As you can see, a little bit darker skinned because of it. It got a little bit burnt or tanned, as we call it here, but yeah, it was nice.
And was the organized trip like that you booked via a travel agency? Yeah,
it was. Yeah. So there was obviously a little bit of a scare in Ireland. I don't know if you know Aer Lingus are on strikes.
Okay. No.
So our flight out was cancelled. Going there was cancelled.
Mhm.
We rescheduled for later that day. But other than that, it was nice. So yeah, family holiday, 4 of us went, and it was nice. Some nice time.
Nice. Well, I must say cucumber time is slowly starting, but luckily earnings results are coming up in 2-3 weeks from now again for some of our favorite holdings. And it was the 4th of July also in America on Thursday, so you didn't miss a lot, I must say. But there are two maybe things that I want to share with you. It is interesting to see that the Fed announced in their notes that they are still not lowering the interest rates yet. So they continue to stay up to 5.5% in the US. And they really want to see inflation reaching its desired level. And we don't really often speak about these kinds of things. We get a lot of questions about it. But I thought, this is very interesting at this moment in time, because you would have expected after the EU started, or the ECB started to make the first step, that the US would also start to follow, right? Because it doesn't feel like we're in the still inflationary environment like last year. Yes, everything feels very expensive. Yeah, but I don't have a feeling that prices are everywhere rising continuously still today. So I was just thinking, what do you think about this?
Yeah, I mean, there's been a lot of talk over the last 12 months. Will they increase? Will they decrease? And I think the expectation has been that they will decrease them not just once, but a couple of times this year. And it hasn't seemed to play it out. Honestly, I give up guessing what they're trying to do.
Yeah.
I don't know the American monetary policy that well.
Yeah.
But it does seem like the EU is ahead of them in terms of how to tackle this. So look, I don't know. All I know is when they don't reduce it, it affects my real estate holdings.
Yes, and that's what I'm so happy about because I was thinking like I could use some more agree realty or something like that. So the longer they wait, the more time we get to load up still some real estate investment trusts, right?
Yeah, but the flip side of that is the longer they wait, the more impact it has on real estate investment trusts. So you have to be careful on the ones
Yeah.
that you are choosing.
Specifically those that have a lot of debt expiring in this year and that will need to refinance it, right? But I must confess that for my positions, I'm quite okay. I don't really. I mean, we know all that Agree Realty is not having any really debt payments in the upcoming 2 years or so. So we should
Yeah,
be good there.
yeah, I think so. I think Vici, who I'm pretty big on
Mhm.
as well, they're the same. They've no big maturities coming up. I don't know about Realty Income. I can't remember off the top of my head because
Yeah.
I've looked at the other two. But yeah, look, I'm happy when they kind of dance around this because it does give us more buying opportunities. And I'll probably, I don't know. I don't know. Have they dipped? I assume they have. I haven't looked at the stock market, but if they have, it'd be hard for me not to buy more next week.
I would say generally it feels like there's a little bit of a downtrend trend going on, but really, really small. There's really,
Nothing there.
and in our investment universe, it's like investen nichts Neues. Yeah, nothing happened.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and then maybe more interesting that actually also triggered a few thoughts on Twitter. I noticed is that Shell is going to make a 2 billion write-off, and this is mostly to do with their chemical facility in Singapore, and even more interestingly, they are stopping their investment in a biofuel plant, and this, of course. Raised quite some people on social media saying like, "Well, go woke, you go broke," right? Or go broke when you go woke. I don't even know how you say it. And yeah, what are your thoughts on this one? Because Shell is, of course, one of those holdings that we always praise a lot. But a 2 billion write-off is no pocket change, right?
It might be for Shell. No, let's be real. So when they're making this transition into renewables and biofuel is part of that, we've always questioned how will they handle the margins not being the same. It's not
Yeah,
the same as oil. And the old CEO was pushing this a lot, but it seems like now they've changed tack a bit. I think this whole fad, it's not even a
yeah,
fad. The whole pressure of it is gone. There's dedicated companies out there that are
yeah,
built for renewables that are not making as much money out of oil. And I think it's hard for Shell to make so much cash out of oil and gas
yeah,
than to move this into a lower margin business. So look, I think I always questioned the need to go into renewables. I agree that there's a time to do it and they should do it over a longer period, but they don't have to rush into it. There's other companies out there that are more designed, built for this type of market. So I'm not too disappointed. Obviously, I don't want to see him waste 2 million every time they make a decision. But yeah, I'm not too disappointed with it. Oil and gas is where the money's at. That's where I want them to focus, if I'm honest.
yeah, yeah. And what I honestly like about it, it's a lot of money, of course, but at least they are not just continuing just to continue because of this. Oh, we invested so much, so let's continue investing. Yeah. So I'm really happy that they kind of took this sunk cost principle and just stop it. And
Yeah.
the CEO, we know what he wants. He wants to get the multiple that U.S. oil majors get, and if needed, he will go to New York. Well,
Uh,
he was outspoken about that. It's all written over it, and this decision is
Part of that.
typically in line with that
Yeah.
with that thinking.
It's part of that. And I kind of applaud him because we look at diversification and we have plenty of examples and we can list
Mm,
two or three AT&T as some of them. And was this a case of diversification? What do they know about renewable energies? Maybe not as much as they know about oil and gas. So stick to what they know. They know oil and gas. They know how to make money out of it. It's not dead, regardless of what everybody will tell you. And I'm happy with that. And I really, honestly, I hope I hope he does go to the New York Stock Exchange. I know you might have a different feeling on that because there's a sense of national pride with Shell in the Netherlands, but that multiple will double, and my portfolio will bounce nicely with that. So I kind of
yeah.
hope they do.
I'm a little bit different there. I do want them to be in renewables. I look at it more from a portfolio management point of view. We do know that renewables um, are having a high chance of defining the future of energy. Yeah, and it's already happening in some countries in the world. And I want Shell to play a part there, which means they need to invest in this. The question is how much. Yeah, and I think they definitely need to invest in it, even if it is just for the learning, so that they get the knowledge in house. Because at a certain moment of time, they will need to buy and acquire companies to stay alive. Yeah, and I don't know how far out that is. That's hard for me to predict. So for me, I want them to be in renewables, but I want them to be in those areas, like invest very small when there's no profitability there really yet, but maybe the potential for profit, and invest much larger when there's already a clear case for profits.
Yeah. I,
So that's how I look at it, but needs to be all part of portfolio management. In my opinion, like 90% should come from oil, gas, and chemicals, and the refining and the marketing, and maybe 10% out of renewables. But for instance, why not put in, for instance, just in Poland, start putting electric charging points at each and every station, for instance, because Poland will also come with this. Yeah, maybe it takes a bit longer, but create the network, build the network here, for instance, and start being a bit more aggressive on that, because we see that EV sales in Europe are quite good. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I would much rather than buy slowly than invest in building and constructing their own plants, because it's a bigger task for me. And I 100% agree that renewable energy has a place to play in our electrical systems and the overall sustainability of our environment. But I think building a plant starting from scratch, it's a huge ask. It's a huge undertaking. There's lots of laws, there's lots of regulations, there's lots of
But
risk.
that's what they have. But that's what they have experience with. If
Yeah,
there's one company that can do this, it's Shell.
true, true. But I think I'd rather buy them way buy their way into it
Yeah,
slowly
yeah.
over time. Yeah. Nice, nice. Two bits of news. I was aware of the Shell one actually. I think someone pinged it to me on Twitter. But thanks for reminding me. And actually, I really hope they go to New York. But dividends. It's been quite over the last few weeks, so I don't think there's too many to speak about. A couple of British companies, Halma PLC hiked their dividend by 7% to 13.2p per share, and Ashtead PLC has a final dividend of 89.25 cent, which makes that I really hate British companies that they work in pence. You know that it's just so awkward.
Well, you file a complaint.
I would. I just really bugs. But Ashtead, as I said, have that. So it's two British companies with dividends. It's been quite on that front, I have to say. A
Yeah,
lot of,
to the UK dividend aristocrats, and I'm a big fan of Halma, and I still don't own them. I really want them one time, but hey, maybe that's a story for a longer conversation one time.
yes, yes. Main topic: vacations are coming up. Probably inspired by me coming home off vacations, I assume. But we've always talked about retirement and what we'll do. And where we would like to live, especially when we're retired. And look, we get lots of questions, don't we, about would we move to lower tax countries, or what would we do? Why wouldn't we do that?
Yeah.
So I think it's a good topic. So what do you think? How do you see yourself spending time abroad when you finally get to retire?
Yeah. So, and then I'm talking here actually already about early retirement, right? Not
Yeah, of course.
not at the age of 67. I really, so first of all, I love living in Poland, but there's also something that I hate here. 7 months of darkness. Yeah, it starts kind of in October all the way till end of March, let's say. It's cold, dark. So it's okay when you're working because the days go fast and such. And it's okay when there's really nice snow, then it's really lovely here. But usually snow you enjoy for 2 3 days with the kids, and after that you only see the mess. Yeah. And so for me, the ideal way of spending time abroad is probably to leave Poland late September, beginning of October, depending on how the weather is at that time. Go somewhere to South Europe, and then come back mid-April to start, preparing the garden a little bit already for the spring season, and then just spend the time here over in Poland because the nature is beautiful here, the weather is really great. So that's really how I envision that, spending my time abroad. How about you? You've got
It's
rain
just,
every day, so
yeah, I was just say you're talking about darkness. Come live in Ireland. I think the average temperature in June, this is June, our summer month, has been 13 degrees. That's the average of the whole month. Come on, how depressing is that? Um, yeah, I think I would love to travel all over the place. I wouldn't like to stay in one spot too often. The issue I would have is that my wife would not be the same in that regard. I think family and friends are important, and I 100% think get that, but I don't think we could stay for too long. So I don't think we could go in 6 7 month blocks because the pool will be just too close to come home. So I could see myself doing it a little bit differently, in that we would probably in the winter months maybe spend a month in somewhere sunny like the south of Spain, or even further down by Tenerife, Lanzarote, somewhere where there's sun, and then come back for a month, and so on. So maybe spend 6 months of the year traveling and 6 months of the year back home. I would try and push for 8 months traveling, but I won't push my luck too much. But yeah, like that, I'd like to travel a bit. But I tell you, when I was in Malaga over the weekend, and myself and my wife went for a walk, and we passed this expat community that I knew was there, and it was really nice. There was lots of people, lots of retired people that were there. And they were having friendly chats, and they were playing bowls and doing all this kind of stuff. But I spoke to my wife about it. I said, They might not be lifelong friends. They might be just drawn together because they live in a certain place because they want the sunshine. It makes you realize how important your friends are. So I don't think I'd like to go fully and commit myself into it. So yeah, go for a month, come back for a month, and maybe work it that way. I think might suit me.
but how do you think also, because you have kids, right? How will you deal with your kids?
They'll be older by the time I'm retired. They'll be finished. They'll be in college. They'll be in school. They'll be working. I don't know how it is with other people. I know myself with my own family. I'm not with them every single day. I go and see them when I can, but work
Yeah,
gets in the way, and they work too. So I don't think it has that much impact. And actually, my last boss, I won't say I won't say the company's big enough anyway. It's not a public company, but he had 6 kids, but he never lived anywhere more than 3 or 4 years. But
yeah,
he's from New Zealand. He was living in America. He's living in the UK. He was living in Northern Ireland. And I asked him about that and his kids. He said, "Look, they're grown. They have their own lives, their own families. What am I going to do? Sit at home waiting for them?" No, he said. But when he does travel home, or they travel to them, they get to enjoy that time together. And it was
yeah,
quite an interesting thought.
yeah. That's the main thought that I have. That would me envision spending my time more like I'm doing now. But the kids would need to work, so and I might retire earlier. So as long as my kids have obligations, but I can't imagine, for instance, if they turn 18, that I say like kick them out of the house or keep them in the house and say like, guys, I'm off for 7 months and cook your own food. I think it would be rather after university, unless they start living on their own during
Yeah.
uni time in student dorm, then maybe. But otherwise, I will probably stay around.
I think it'd be a more natural progression of when they're ready to move on, then you
Hmm.
can spend, because you'll have more free time to yourself. You're not
Yeah.
waiting on them, or they don't need you as much. So you will naturally have more time, and you can use that time then to invest in
Yeah, I
yourself, I
think so as
suppose.
well. I
Yeah,
think so as well.
yeah. How about you? And you spoke about what you would like to do, but how would your family feel about following the same path?
Well, it's with most of the things, it's not like you give them a choice.
Uh,
Yeah.
you're a braver man than me.
No, but my wife has the same kind of desire to travel. But for us, I think we would rather stick at one place for a longer time to actually build up some friends in such a place where you can hang around. For me, it usually gets boring. If I'm like 2 3 weeks somewhere and I don't meet other people, I get bored. So I rather spend somewhere the whole season, where you get to know other people, other couples, where you can nice hang out with. That's really how I envision that. And for instance, two of the countries where I'm really thinking about is for different reasons. The first one's Portugal. I've been as a kid often in Portugal, and I love this country. It has everything: the sea, the mountains, the culture. It simply has everything. At the same time, I think almost everyone that has explored this topic also knows that Portugal is very attractive for retirees, also early retirees. For instance, about the taxation of dividends. If you are already living off your pension and at the age after 60, you also have a very favorable taxing scheme. So there's a lot to like being retired and living in Portugal from a tax benefit, while you also get a beautiful country with it. So Portugal is definitely one for me, very high on the list. But I would have to go by plane then and such here, which makes me a little bit less mobile because I don't see myself renting a car for 7 months and at the same time driving 3,500, 4,000 kilometers to get to destination. If I do it, I would need a camper van or something like that and take 2 weeks to get there. Yeah, and explore other cities on the road.
Yeah.
But Portugal is really, really high on my list there.
Oh, I've never been to Portugal actually. In all my places, it's on the list, but it's just never kind of popped up. Anyone I know who's gone there has said the same as you, and obviously the tax benefits is something that if you're moving for that reason, but personally, I
Yeah.
wouldn't alone. It's not enough of a pull from you. It's obviously a good place to consider, and I'd imagine it's quite similar to Spain. And I quite like the south of Spain. The people are friendly, and the weather's nice. It's also quite mountainous. But if I was to pick somewhere to live for 6, 7, 8, 9 months, I'd actually love to live in New Zealand of
Oh,
them places, because New Zealand is one of those places where you can have the sun, you can have the mountains, you can have, just depending on the part that you have, you can have so much stuff. And I'm quite like you. I'd get bored quite easy. If I was in Spain for 9 months, I'd get bored of walking the same mountains or
yeah.
the same thing. So New Zealand would be the ideal place for me to live if I was to move permanently or to move for 9 months.
Yeah. And then it's good that you mentioned about this permanently, because we know from a tax point of view, it's like a rule of thumb, but the country where you spend, let's say, 200 days a year, that's the country where you need to pay your taxes as well, right?
Yeah.
So if you need to go to New Zealand, your whole tax would shift to another country as well. So, and that's also when I consider these kinds of things like Portugal, for Portugal, I will probably make sure that I get over the 200 days so that I get the benefits there, but only if I really enjoy it that much at that time that I want to stay there multiple years. Yeah, like that. But otherwise, I would make sure that I spend those 200 days in Poland. Then I'll take a little bit of the winter with it just to make sure I meet the threshold. Yeah, because the second country, and this is actually more convenient from me from a distance point of view, would be Croatia. I mean, I love Croatia. We go there often with the kids for holidays, for vacations. The weather is always good. The people are so friendly. The facilities are really good. It's still relatively affordable.
Mm.
So I will see it soon again when we go. Now that they entered the Eurozone, I believe. But for me, it will be Croatia. I mean, you've got everything there. Also culturally, very, very beautiful.
Yeah, yeah. I believe it's starting to get more expensive there. It used to be known as super cheap, especially when you were Irish.
No, it's not super cheap. It's
Yeah,
not super
yeah.
cheap.
It's starting to get more how would you say, expensive. But from what I heard and from what I've seen on pictures, and one of our good friends Ron, that to be traveling the world and sends us pictures, has sent pictures of Croatia and all these nice places. It looks very, very nice. I'd love to go to Romania, around those areas. I'd actually like to travel through all the kind of Eastern European countries. It's one area that I'm under traveled in. I've only ever passed through, really. So I'd like to spend some time there. From what I believe, people are always friendly, welcoming, and the quality of life is getting better. And also it's cheap. It's a lot cheaper than
Yeah.
here. I mean, I was in Spain obviously last week, and Spain used to be a relatively inexpensive holiday
Yeah.
compared to what we spend in Ireland. But actually, it's no cheaper. It's not. It's no different than me going
Yeah.
down the road. The food, the drink, even the shopping, everything was a bit
Yeah.
more expensive. Now, obviously, I'm in a tourist area, so they might bump up the prices and that. But if I was looking for value for money and somewhere I'd like to stay and preserve more of my dividend income, I'd
Yeah.
go more Eastern European, and Romania is top of my list.
Yeah. No, no, you know what the benefit is for me for Croatia? I can drive there in one day by car. You know, it's a
Ah,
12 to 14-hour drive. I do it sometimes in the vacations. We usually leave at 4 or 5, and then we're in the around 7, 8. We're at the campsite. Still enough daylight to build up our stuff there, our gear. But you know, Croatia is really the one, because we're talking here also a bit about daydreaming, right? And Croatia is really where I also daydream having a house at the beach, just an apartment. It doesn't need to be a house, but just an apartment, maybe with a swimming pool that is a bit like for all the people living there as well. The beach nearby, and you know, just living there during the winter and then putting it for rent in the summer, so that you kind of break even on your mortgage in the first years, and then afterwards start earning on it. And you know, also have with that invest a little bit in real estate. That's also really what I could see myself doing there. And I don't mind sticking to one place when the place is good, but it needs to be typically a place where within 100 kilometers you can go to other places as well, so that you can roam a little bit around. And yeah, yeah. I'm more kind of a person of habits
yeah,
from that
yeah.
point of view.
I'm glad you brought up the property. Would you buy property would you actually be willing to do that?
Only if I know the place and the area well enough. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, why not?
yeah. I don't think I would. I don't think I would, because you're stuck to that place, in my opinion.
Yeah, then you can buy a few properties in different places.
It's like playing Monopoly.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I don't think so. I think if I was buying real estate, I'd buy it here in Ireland, rent it out. I know the
Mhm.
market here. I know the people here. I have people that can check up on that property if I need, and I'm
Yeah.
not there. Whereas I feel if I was in Europe, or not Europe, America, or anywhere, I don't know the markets that well. And I've heard stories about buying in Spain and buying in all these places, and it's never worked out. I don't know actually one person that it's worked out well for, in terms of even breaking
Yeah,
even.
I think that this dream of many people to have a holiday home somewhere abroad, I think that's a very tricky one. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
But for me, I wouldn't buy it in the first year. Yeah, it's I should really have the feeling like, okay, this is the place where I could spend the next 20 years in the winters. Yeah, so yeah, why not? Why not? But I don't look at real estate. I look at real estate investments then also a little bit different, like a dividend stock. Like it's a buy and hold if possible. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Be a little bit tricky for me, as I said. Uh, One story I know from a close friend of mine. I'm going on holiday soon with board in Spain. He's he's an accountant, actually very experienced and good accountant. But he was saying with the laws in Spain and all this, he was lucky to get out at break even, and he held it for 10 years.
Wow.
So it was
So he overpaid.
but at the time it wasn't. It's just the way the market went and how hard it was
Mhm.
to rent it out. So everybody says
Okay.
I'll rent it out during the summer or the winter.
Yeah.
It's not that easy.
Yeah. Yeah.
So look, for me, property would be a tough one, but I think I'd be like a little
Yeah.
nomad. Honestly, I think I prefer to just travel
Yeah,
around and
because that's the alternative. Just buy a camper van or
yeah,
something like that and try and travel around.
yeah, yeah. That would be ideal. We're actually speaking about that, my wife and I, about converting a van
Hmm.
to a camper van. And my sister-in-law has just done it.
Yeah.
And they're going now. They're just traveling around Ireland, but I mean, they keep sending pictures in every day. They're staying at this mountain, staying at this place, and it's just, I don't know, the freedom to
Yeah.
go
Yeah.
wherever you want. And it's I think I prefer that lifestyle.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I don't,
That could also be for me an option, but still with a camper van, I'm not the one that wants to be every day somewhere else. I really like to get to know the place. So for me, that means like you need to be actually full season somewhere. Yeah. To
yeah,
to see all the cultural events going on and everything. So, but I could imagine that. But then with a camper van, spending like 3 4 months in a camper van, that's also a bit much for me. But Hey, we'll have to try these kinds of things out. But look, maybe to sum it up, right? Because I'm going on vacation soon. I'm for sure daydreaming again about what I will do when I'm retired and how I will spend my time. And you know it as well, probably when you walk through a city, you see those real estate agents there, you see the pictures, you check the housing prices in the neighborhood, and really the dreaming starts. And if I really would like to, how is it? Really also get a tax benefit out of it. My thinking now is I'll go to Portugal for those months. And if it's more about ease and ease of use, I probably would go to Croatia. And this is really strong conviction for me that I don't want to spend the winters, as an example, in over here. If the kids are old enough that, to your point, are self-sufficient, let's say, and can live on their own without the need of me being around.
Yeah, yeah. The ideal place to me, if I was to sum it up, and I don't know if this place exists, right? Because I'd love to go to Australia, which I didn't mention. New Zealand's obviously there, but one, English speaking is important to me, right? So if I was to go somewhere to stay, I can't speak any other languages, so I need to be able to communicate. So English would be important to me. I'd love somewhere where the weather is steady all year round, like between 18 and 20, 21 degrees. Not too hot,
That
not too
cold?
cold. That's I just told you it's 13 degrees over here in June.
Okay,
So
okay.
that's quite warm for me. That's t-shirt and
Yeah.
weather. That's t-shirt weather for me.
Yeah.
So I'd like somewhere with steady all year weather, not just
Or maybe you can go to Easter Island.
yeah, maybe.
Good. Well, hey, I'm very curious also to where our own listeners would love to live, because many of us invest for freedom. Yeah, and I think the place where you stay is a big part and contributor to this feeling of freedom. And we actually never spoke about this before, so we gave a little bit of an insight in our thoughts here about how this would look like, and where we would live off. Prefer to live off of dividends. Mine is clear. My favorite retirement destination will be Portugal or Croatia, and for you, it will be more like a nomad with a kind of a preference at the moment for Eastern Europe, if I understand it well.
Yes, exactly.
Where they speak English and where it's around 20 degrees all year long.
yes, which is probably hard to find.
Well, and it's probably somewhere inside in the airco in an English expat community, somewhere deep in Romania.
let's find it. So I think that was a nice little chat. Thank you for making this easy for me today. As I said, I'm only off my travel, so I enjoyed this little chat. But we have a portfolio review. This is from Gustaf, a Swedish investor, similar age profile to myself, and his goal is to have a better retirement. His concern, just before we go into his portfolio, his concern is whether he is diversified enough. So he wants to have a portfolio, kind of like an all-weather portfolio, if you put it that way, that works okay, even if certain sectors are less popular in the market and if some sectors are more popular. So he's got about 22, 23 stocks. I must confess, he is a Swedish investor, so there's some of these companies I may have heard of, but I'm not familiar on what they do. He's got a lot of Swedish companies, some Finnish companies, and some European companies. So I'll name the top 5 or 6, and then I might get your thoughts, right? So his first one is Evolution Gaming, which is nearly 9% of his portfolio. It then has Shell, but it's based in America. It's the ADR, 7%. He's got Valmet, Valmet. It's a Finnish company. I think they do something in automation and around that. He's got Bedison B, which is another gaming company similar to Evolution, and then he's got Canadian Natural Resources. So what are your thoughts if you look through the portfolio? Obviously there's more, and you might comment as well.
Yeah. So, a 3.7% yield is quite solid, right, for the portfolio. What I like is that there are a lot of actually European companies in there, and it's not to favor Europe, but what I like about it is that these are probably companies that he knows. Because there's a lot of Nordic companies in there. We have also Scanfil, Bravida, Tele2, Axfood, Volvo. Yeah, some of them, and we are indeed not so familiar with those, and maybe we should change that. But that's another story for another day.
Yep.
So I like that. But there's hardly any American company in here, and I don't
Hershey's.
know why. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it's Hershey. That's it.
Yeah.
So there's a Canadian Natural Resources in there, National Bank of Canada's. There's what's the other one? Alimentation Couche-Tard is in there as well, but not really American. And maybe this has to do with his broker. I don't know why not. But that's very awkward to see so little U.S. dividend aristocrats. So, question, of course, Gustaf, is there something specific to this? Is there a reason why you can't own them? If if there is no reason, I would definitely recommend to explore a little bit more the U.S. dividend aristocrats. And secondly, I have a feeling that based on the stocks that are in here, many have a strong industrial profile. So I'm afraid that actually his portfolio will not work that well if certain sectors are more or less popular on the market, right? Because what he's effectively saying is my all-weather portfolio, is it resistant to downturns? I'm afraid that he may experience, Gustaf, that you may experience actually more downside than the average index, let's say, because of the sensitivity to economic cycles in your portfolio. Yeah, because there's quite some energy in there, industrials, and they are known for being cyclical. So I said consideration would also be like look a little bit still more in other consumer staples, but also look at, for instance, the IT sectors. Yeah, it's also largely missing here, and healthcare is missing here, and specifically healthcare usually goes through the cycles. It really depends on their drug pipeline. So those are some things that come directly to my mind, Gustaf, and I hope this helps.
Yeah, and I don't have the same issue that you have in terms of the US stocks. I don't mind not seeing that, but I'm thinking about what he said, and he wants his portfolio to work okay, even if certain sectors are more or less popular. And what confuses me is that we know consumer staples and healthcare, they're known for that. They might not perform as well when everything is up, but definitely when the market is turning down, they help steady the ship. And I'm quite surprised not to see more of them in the portfolio. I don't see any healthcare. And in terms of consumer staples, I see Ahold Delhaize, which is 5%. I see Alimentation Couche-Tard, 5%, and then Hershey, 2%. So 7% of your portfolio, sorry,
And X food
12%. Oh,
and
Axe
X
Food,
food.
Axe Food. But a small percentage of the portfolio is consumer staples. And I think if you're looking for more, I think it's less volatility, I think is really what you're looking for. I think you have to increase that because Evolution, Shell, Bedison are cyclical. From what I know about Valmet, their automation process technologies also cyclical. So your top 4 or 5 companies are all quite cyclical. And if you're looking for a more balanced and less volatility, you should shift your top 4 or 5 positions to be consumer staples, and that's my feeling on it.
Yeah. So maybe a thing that you could do, Gustav, is look at some of the sectors and organize your portfolio a little bit per sector. See where you're overweight, where you're underweight, and also look at stocks maybe with relatively low beta. It means like you have limited upside or less upside when the market goes up, but also less downside. But it brings some stability in your portfolio. And a simple thing you could do is already put everywhere the beta number behind the ticker just to see like what are your numbers now, and
Yeah.
get a feeling for this.
Yeah. Well, let's not forget, we don't know when you've bought these, and they could be top positions as a consequence of the valuation, like Evolution Gaming, for example, and Shell. You might have bought them at a time when it was better to do so, and your other positions might go into it. So look, that's just our opinion based on what we see.
And Gustaf has no issue finding quality because
No, absolutely not.
he has also LVMH, right? ASR,
Siemens.
Yeah, Siemens, Munich Re. These are all high quality businesses, and that applies to almost all of them. So he has no issue finding and investing in quality stocks. So it's really more about the volatility indeed, and whether it does what you expect it to do in case of a downturn.
Yeah, yeah. Actually, refreshing a nice portfolio. I actually love seeing that there's very little US
Yes,
stocks, because it shows as Europeans we can build portfolios without relying on
true,
America.
true, true,
Quite
true.
nice to see. Okay, so I hope that was helpful, insightful. Again, if we've missed anything, if we made assumptions that were wrong, reach out to us, let us know. We're happy to chat about this offline as well as online. So
Yeah, and we
thank you.
still have two other people that submitted the portfolio. One is Kieran Ainsley, and the other one is Markus Kettunen, and
Alan.
also Alan. So for the next 3 episodes, we can also bring up their portfolios, and if others are interested into this as well, just drop us an email or reach out to us on Facebook or Twitter, and we'll put it on the backlog.
Okay, listeners' questions, and we'll start with David. David, although buybacks are a potential great way to increase further shareholder value, it was banned between 1930 and the 1980s. I did not know that. But it was banned because companies were able to create these false incentives to manipulate the market. We can see something similar with that when you have adjusted earnings and all this carry on. So what are your thoughts? What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, for me, buybacks is a part of a capital allocation decision, and it should be tolerated. It shouldn't be illegal. I understand that when, for instance, a great crisis happened, like in the 1930s, you usually look at greed and all of this, and you start to ban everything that feels associated to it. But I see it really as a capital allocation decision. If a company doesn't know what to do with their cash because they're earning too much cash, like Microsoft and Apple, then they should have the opportunity to retire their shares, specifically when they feel they are undervalued. If they are not undervalued, I feel they should give the money to me in the form of dividends. That's why I always feel like that dividends should be prioritized over buybacks. But yeah, I understand that a lot of financial engineering is happening, but that's where I always say it's not a stock market, but a market of stocks. You can select those stocks that are not doing this financial engineering and really use it properly as a capital allocation decision. A stock that comes to mind is ASR. Yeah, they are very clear and about the cash they are able to generate. They have their how I said their policy in place saying like it should be more than 140% of solvency for us to pay out a dividend, and more than 175% for us to also pay out or also buy back some shares. And when a stock like them is yielding 6.5%, then it is worth retiring some shares because you keep the dividend in your pocket, right? Yeah. So in these cases, I support it. But there are those kind of companies that are just buying all the way at the highest valuation, and then at the bottom, they suddenly stop everything. So those companies I tend to dislike.
Yeah. I think what he's asking here is, should it be banned? Was it right to be banned?
No, it shouldn't be banned. And
I don't think
yeah.
so. I think it boils down to education, and basically what they're doing when they ban something like this is saying that investors are too stupid to think for themselves and to actually understand the companies that they're investing in.
But think also about the change in regulations. Yeah, nowadays with the accounting rules and everything, there was no US GAAP at that time, like we know it today. There was no internet, which allowed us to get almost a daily update on how many shares have been retired.
Yeah.
That's not how it worked in those times in the 100 years ago. Yeah, so there's way more transparency in this as well.
That is true, but I think it's your own responsibility to understand what you're investing in. And if I know times are different, not as transparent, but it's still up to you to invest your money. It's your money at the end of the day. So if you don't understand something, don't put your money into it. And I feel really strongly about that. But look at what Europe do to us. They think we're too stupid to invest in ETFs, so they have to have this key investor document. But I honestly think that it's up to the investor to know what you're investing in. It's your money. You make the decision, and you need to educate yourself about that. And whether that's looking at financial statements, whether it's understanding how they're allocating their money, what they're doing, how they're buying back shares, I think it's firmly on our shoulders. Philippe has asked us a question. We all love and want to own companies with dividend growth charts like those, like Visa. Of course we do, right?
Yeah.
But how do you find companies which are in the early years of establishing and generating such great returns? How do I find a company that is Visa 15 years ago?
That's the $1 million question. That's really the $1 million question. I think you really need to start looking more at how growth investors look at investing. These kind of things are more about business analysis. So can you learn from Visa? And what were the trends over the last 10, 15 years for Visa? Digitalization of payments. Yeah, the rise of the internet, let's say like that. Our comfort and our trust in online payments. Globalization, which allowed it to expand into a
Yeah,
global company. It was in the sweet spot, and I think you need to look at that now as well. Which are those companies maybe that are now kind of mature enough in somewhere in the market, has a visionary CEO, and they have, for instance, the technology to scale into a global environment.
yeah,
I mean, that's what you learn from Visa, and yeah, what are those companies now that also pay a dividend, right? At that time, like 25-30% dividend with growth profile.
yeah,
So you could argue ASML from a few years ago was such a company as well. Yeah, Evolution Gaming started 2-3 years ago, 4 years ago maybe. But can Evolution Gaming become so big as Visa? I don't think so. Specifically, not in this market that they operate in. So I think it's really hard one, and most likely will end up quickly in the IT sector for these kinds of companies. Maybe like maybe still a coffee chain or something like that. But we have Starbucks already that did this. So it's really, really hard. But I
yeah.
think you end up more looking in the bucket of growth companies that pay a dividend than that you look into the dividend growth companies first. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. Looking backwards is always 2020.
Yeah.
It's easy to see, but if you go back 20 years and maybe you remember, uh, I used cash for everything. I had a bank card,
Yeah.
but everything was cash. I only used my card to go
Yeah.
take money out of a ATM.
hmm
I wasn't buying online. I wasn't using it in the shops.
No, you would not use your credit card online. Come on, that was
Yeah,
crazy at that
yeah,
time, right?
exactly. So could you really sit there at that time and say, in 20 years' time, Visa is going to be worth what it's worth now and grow the way it's grown now? I think it would have been a hard sell to maybe one or two people I know, but it would have been
Yeah.
a hard sell to see that. So I think it's a difficult question.
Yeah.
And you're right.
I couldn't have imagined how the world evolved like that. Really not. But what I do sometimes think is I don't want to only invest in companies that are 50 billion plus. So sometimes a little bit in let's say in a company that is worth around 1 billion or something like that, 2 billion. Look at such companies that have an opportunity, that have a product to scale. This is where you may find something, right? And maybe there are only 3, 4, 5 companies in the world that you will find in this regards.
David also followed up with that question. He said, on top of the question that Philippe has asked, with such low starting yield, these companies also need to sustain their double-digit dividend growth for 10 to 15 years before making it meaningful. Does anything have a good calculator to compare between high and low yielders? Although I agree with high-quality companies, I'm yet to find enough confidence in lowering on my average yield for retirement age.
Yeah, so David is really thinking the same like I am.
Yeah.
I don't feel like I can predict for 95% of the companies whether they will be able to grow double-digit dividends. I have a suspicion that Microsoft could do this, and Apple, because they are very conservative in their dividend hikes at this moment in time, so their payout ratios are going lower. But generally, I can't. Now, a calculator, I don't know. I just have a simple G sheet, yeah, where I put the amount of returns in columns, and then the growth rates down, and then you can just calculate. You create such a matrix where you can exactly see how many years it will take before you reach the 10% yield on cost, and that's what I usually use to assess that. And it's true that if you then go to the 1 or 1.5% yield, you require many double-digit growth years, which are very unlikely for me for almost my entire portfolio to imagine.
Yeah, yeah. Look, I think you hit the nail on your head when you said you need to look at these companies like growth companies. I think anything with sub 1% yield, even though it has high dividend growth in the short term, I think you almost have to segregate that and say it's a growth
Yeah.
company. And if you get 15 years of double digit growth, great. But if you don't, maybe look at the total return and look at the
Yeah.
share price. And the second question for Philippe, do you account for Forex fluctuations when investing, mainly in Euro and USD?
No, not really, but I do build a little bit of a margin of safety in there.
Yeah.
So generally not I live in Poland, so it's
Yeah.
actually zloty, right? So I just take it on the chin. My philosophy is that I will spend most of my money in a euro country, for instance, Croatia or Portugal. So I should be okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Most of mine is US or Euro. You obviously have zloty, so it's more of a concern for you, but I don't think about it. I feel like it will average out over time anyway, especially with the dollar. Val has asked us, considering the recent decision on the presidential immunity by the US Supreme Court, are you worried about US-based stocks and their dividend safety?
No, no, really not. I mean, I like this, right? Because it's then the narrative that scares us about the US. I mean, it's true that I feel like, but this is more political, that the people need to start making up their minds about what they really want for the future. There seems to be a huge culture war going on there between Republicans and Democrats, but I have seen no matter who's in office, the S&P 500 usually just continues to grow with a once in a while a recession in between. So I think it doesn't really matter which president is there.
Yeah.
Economy seems to be strong. They have a lot of debt. That's what I'm more concerned about. I'm more concerned about the shift in geopolitics with the rise of China and such, and what that means for the Western world. But on the short term or the midterm, I'm not concerned at all.
Yeah. I've blocked I've blocked pretty much anything got to do with the US, especially presidential, on Twitter, because it was
Yeah,
unbearable.
I've been. So I discovered the mute function after I asked someone about it. So I've got Biden, I've muted. I've got Trump muted. So when people use this name, I will not see it on my timeline. I've got the debates and the elections. I've
Yeah.
got those terms all muted, so I will not see them. And my timeline became clean again.
Yeah, thank God. David Marriott has asked us about Nike. The question is, do you still have strong enough conviction in Nike?
Yes, I have. It's a great brand, great products, great endorsements from top sporters. Yes, I have, and I'm a owner of Nike nowadays. So yeah,
Yeah.
I'm very happy with this ownership.
I must say, everywhere I was in Malaga, whenever anyone was out running or exercising, all I saw was Nike. That is all I saw. And I made a comment to my wife, and I think I saw one person, and we knew them from the hotel wearing Adidas, but everybody, and I was like, Nike is not dead. Nike is still all
No.
right. Still number one. Christian has asked us about SAP. What do you think about them?
Well, I owned them even for some time when they were around 95 euros. I sold them at 120 euros because I noticed that when the reports were coming in that I have no conviction at all for the company. The issue is that I know their product a bit too well, and I find it's just a horrible product. I mean, I say it wrong. The product is probably one of the most advanced ones in the world for what it needs to do. But if I then look at the whole user experience and everything, I feel like it really disengages me. Yeah. And there's always like people complaining about this product. So the good thing is they have a lock-in with their customers. At that time when I sold, I saw that they were really not able to do well with the cloud. That has changed. They found their path to the cloud, luckily for them. So maybe I shouldn't have sold, but that was the moment where I owned it for half a year and a year, and I just didn't see anything that I liked in the reports. I felt like, no, why do I even own this one? So SAP is for me such a hate love stock, and that's why I don't want it in my portfolio.
Okay. And what about Emerson Electric? Have you ever looked into those?
Yeah, 66 years of dividend growth. I mean, top products in the oil and gas industry when it comes to equipment, right? But we all know that oil and gas stocks are not investing so much capex anymore as they used to do, which is now reflected in a 1% average dividend growth over the last, I don't know, almost a decade. So, and then just for, I don't even know what the yield is. Is it 3.5%, 4% right now? For me, that is just way too much. No, the dividend yield is 2%, even less than 2%. Yeah, no, come on. That is. I'm sorry, but I can't invest in this. It's very very low dividend growth. I mean, we had 17% inflation here, and this stock is doing 1.2%. No, I don't need that. Top quality company, but I think they don't have enough brand going for them for the next 20 years to make a meaningful difference to my dividend portfolio.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, it's a company that I've never looked at. I'm aware of the brand and the naming and its role in automation and motors, but never popped up on my list. And Marcus asked us about Mondelez. Um, Mondelez is always an interesting one for me. I love this graphic that goes around that shows all the companies that own pretty much the majority of the brands in the world, and Unilever's there, and Mondelez is there as well. So I think it's from a brand standpoint that has a lot of brand power. It's probably a good company, but you know what? I've never looked at it in enough detail to have conviction on it. I've always stayed. I've had Coca Cola. I've had Ahold, had Unilever at the time actually, and I think I preferred Unilever over Mondelez. And I was probably wrong in that assumption at the time, because when I look at the dividend growth, the 5-year dividend growth rate is 10.3%, and their dividend growth over 10 years is quite high as well. They have a 2.54% yield as well. So it's probably one to add to the list to do a proper look at again. As I said, I preferred Unilever at the time, but Unilever has been dead money, whereas Mondelez seemed to be growing a little bit better. So
Yeah,
it's
there was
one of,
also a nice post about Unilever on the Facebook group about it being dead money, and I think that's a sentiment that many of us have.
yeah. And look, I take my learnings from that. I think brand power alone is not enough to see growth in the company. You
Yeah,
obviously need to see other things, and Reckitt Bank Insurance probably is similar to Unilever in that. But I can see from Mondelez that 10% dividend growth, I got that one wrong. So it's
yeah.
worth looking more into. And then the last question is from Sammy, and he's asking us about Sunoco products. Price has been diving to a 4-year low, 41 years of dividend growth with a decent 4.2% yield. I've looked at Sunoco before, and I prefer to stay with, if you remember, Kappa, Smurfit Kappa, which is the Irish packaging company. The problem is it's hard. It's hard with these companies to see where future growth is coming from. They're all trying these like alternate things, but essentially it's just packaging companies, and I don't know how many of them you can have in the world and be so successful. So in the end, I didn't have enough conviction in that industry and moved out of it. They do have a fantastic dividend history. They have good growth rate. They have a good yield now, so I can see the conviction behind them in terms of dividend growth. But like I was saying, the share price just keeps tanking, and there's a reason for that. The balance sheet wasn't the strongest, if I remember off the top of my head. I think Smurfit Kappa was a little bit stronger as well. But look, it's an industry that I didn't have enough conviction for, if I'm honest. So I stayed away from it, and I sold Smurfit Kappa as well for that same reason. Um, the second part of his question is: have you ever used technical analysis when considering a stock purchase? Nah,
Yeah, I played with it, but no, it would take me too much. I said time to learn about it, and I don't really care about this. I care more about the underlying fundamentals, and then I just buy it and put it on the shelf. So I'm not a market timer or momentum investor.
yeah, exactly. We have our own valuation techniques that we obviously use, but I think technical analysis, you risk time in the market, and then you risk then thinking that if I can use technical analysis to buy the stock, maybe I can sell it at the top and you might get into this vicious circle.
No, but I wish I understood technical analysis better. I do believe that there are patterns there in the financial market which have their roots into psychology. Yeah, and I wish I was able to do it, because I do think, for instance, you can get a little bit more of an edge out of it. For instance, when a stock is falling, yeah, like a falling knife, if you know how technical analysis works, I would hopefully feel a better informed investor at that time. But again, I feel like the amount of time it would take me to master that and to learn that, I see limited benefit out of that for those additional few points, let's say, that I could make out of it. So that's why it's not of my interest.
I think that's all you're talking about, those couple of percentage points difference. And for a long-term investor, does that really matter? And I don't think so.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't. So, nice question, though. So that is the end of the show. Thanks to everyone again for all your questions. And thanks to you, European DJ. You did all the work for me. I just had to show up and turn on my mic today. I hope everyone enjoyed the topic, and please let us know where your favorite locations are, because that will obviously give us inspiration. And I have something to chat about my wife to tell her where we're going to go next on holiday. So let us know. And we'll talk to you all next week. Remember, both of us at Dividend Talk are not certified financial specialists through formal education. We are just two guys sharing our journey for inspiration and entertainment purposes. Hence, this is not investment advice. Although we do our best, we can't promise that the information discussed is always correct, nor appropriate for you or anybody else. We always recommend that you do your own due diligence and be accountable for your own choices. As we always say, you can't borrow conviction from others. Last but not least, by listening to our podcast, you agree to hold us harmless from any ramifications, financial or otherwise, that occur to you as a result of acting on information provided in this podcast.